Why are we afraid of death? I don't think the answer is obvious, and I don't think it's just one thing. I think the fear has layers, and some of them we don't even recognize in ourselves. Today, I want to walk through those layers. Not to fix the fear, not to tell you how to feel, just to look at it honestly, from different angles and see what's actually there. Let's start with the most obvious layer, the biological one. Every living thing with a nervous system avoids death. It's not a philosophy, it's a reflex. The antelope doesn't run from the lion because it has contemplated mortality. It runs because millions of years of evolution built a machine that fights to stay alive, and that machine doesn't ask for permission. Pain hurts. Danger triggers adrenaline. The heart races before the mind even knows why. Humans have that same machine, but we have something else too. We know, long before the lion arrives, that the lion is coming. We carry the awareness of our own end around us, sometimes quietly, sometimes not. And that awareness transforms simple fear into something heavier, dread. The antelope, as far as we know, does not lie awake at night wondering what it means to die. But we do. So biology is the first door. But it can't be the whole answer. It explains why we flinch. It doesn't explain why we grieve our own future. So let's go deeper. Let's try something genuinely difficult. Try to imagine what it's like to not exist. Not darkness, because darkness is something. Not silence, because silence is experienced. Not floating in a void, because that's still you doing the floating. I mean the absence of experience entirely. No awareness, no time passing, no sense that anything ever was or ever will be. Just nothing. Not even the awareness that there is nothing. You can't do it, can you? The mind hits a wall. It can imagine being a different person. It can imagine being in a different place. It can even imagine being a ghost, watching the world carry on without you. But it cannot imagine the absence of experience itself. Every thought you have requires a thinker. Every image requires a viewer. You cannot picture the end of picturing. The philosopher Epicurus made a famous argument about this. He said, "Where death is, I am not." Meaning, the moment death arrives, there is no I left to encounter it. You and death never occupy the same room. So why, he asked, fear something you will never actually experience? It's a logically compelling point, and yet almost no one finds it emotionally convincing. We hear the argument, we nod along, and then we go back to fearing death anyway. Why? Maybe because the failure of imagination itself is the source of fear. The mind is a storytelling machine. It needs continuity. It needs a before and an after. The idea of the story simply stopping, not ending with a resolution, not fading out, but just ceasing, feels like a violation of how reality is supposed to work. We can't think our way past the wall, and that inability is itself terrifying. But I want to suggest something. I want to suggest that for many of us, the fear of death isn't really about non-existence at all. It's about something more immediate. It's about loss. Imagine everything you love. The people, the places, the small rituals that make up your day, the way light comes through the window at a certain hour, the sound of someone's voice, the projects you're in the middle of, the conversations you haven't had yet, the apologies you still need to make, the future you've been quietly counting on. Now imagine all of it being taken away at once. Not fading gradually, not transforming into something else, just gone. That's what death is, from the perspective of the living. It's not an experience of nothing, it's the termination of everything. And the weight of that is unbearable, not because of what death is, but because of what life is. Life is attachment. Life is love and investment and the slow accumulation of meaning. Death is the severing of every single one of those threads. This might explain why the fear of death grows as we age, or as we build more. A young person with few ties might feel invincible. A parent holding their child might feel the weight of mortality like a physical presence in the room. The more we have to lose, the more terrifying the loss becomes. So perhaps the fear of death is really the fear of grief. Grief for our own life. Grief for the people we'll leave behind. Grief for the story we'll never get to finish. But there's another layer still. Death is the ultimate unknown. We can study almost everything else. We can map the ocean floor, we can peer into the nucleus of an atom, we can send telescopes into deep space and look backward in time toward the birth of the universe. But death is a door that only opens one way. No one comes back with a report, no data, no certainty, just silence. And humans are profoundly uncomfortable with uncertainty. We want answers, we want closure, we want the world to make sense. The fear of death might, at its deepest level, simply be the fear of a question we cannot answer. It's not the darkness that terrifies us, it's the not knowing what's in the dark. Every culture in human history has tried to fill that silence. Heaven, hell, reincarnation, the Summerlands, Valhalla, Nirvana, merging with a universal consciousness. The stories are beautiful and elaborate and, in their own way, deeply reassuring. They give shape to the formless. They turn the unknown into something we can at least imagine. But the fact we need them at all tells you something important about the shape of fear. We are not creatures who can simply accept a void. We need a story. We need continuation, and death refuses to give us one. I'll come back to whether the stories are enough, but first I want to open a door that might change the entire way we think about this fear. What if the fear of death is not actually about death at all? What if it's about life? Think about it this way. Imagine you knew with absolute certainty that you would live forever. What would change? Would you still feel urgency? Would you still make hard choices? Would you still tell people you love them today? Or would you put it off until some distant century when it felt more convenient? If we had infinite time, we might never truly live. We'd drift. We'd postpone. We'd scatter ourselves across endless possibilities without ever committing to any of them. There would always be more time. There would always be another chance. Nothing would have weight because nothing would be final. The philosopher Martin Heidegger argued that mortality is precisely what gives life its meaning. He called it being towards death. The awareness that our time is finite is what forces us to choose, to prioritize, to invest ourselves in something. Death is the horizon that gives life its shape. Without it, everything blurs. With it, every moment becomes precious. Not despite the fact that it will end, but because of it. This reframes the fear entirely. Maybe when we fear death, what we're really feeling is an unspoken question. Have I lived fully? Have I used the time I had? Have I said the things that needed to be said? Or have I been waiting for a moment that hasn't come? If that's true, then the fear of death isn't a curse. It's a compass. It points towards the things we still need to do. It reminds us that the story is still being written and that we are still holding the pen. The fear is not an enemy, it's a signal. And what it's signaling is that life matters. So, why are we afraid of death? I've opened doors, the biological instinct carved into our nerves by millions of years of survival and evolution, the impossible task of imagining our own existence, and the terror of hitting that mental wall, the grief of losing everything we love, every attachment, every unfinished thread, the unknown, the unanswerable question, the silence that every culture has tried to fill with stories, and the possibility that underneath all of it, the fear is really about life, about whether we've lived it well enough to let go when the time comes. I haven't given you an answer. I'm not sure there is one. But I'll leave you with something I keep coming back to. The fear of death is, in a strange way, the shadow of love. We fear losing life because life matters to us. We fear the end because we care deeply about the story. If nothing mattered, death would be easy. It's precisely because life is beautiful and difficult and full of people we can't stand to leave that death feels like an enemy. Maybe the fear isn't something to overcome. Maybe it's something to listen to. It tells you what you value. It tells you who you love. It reminds you that you're still here, still in the middle of the story, still able to do something with the time you have. Not despite the fear, but because of it. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please like, subscribe. I have a playlist of all similar videos on my channel, so please go look at it if you haven't already. And I will see you in the next one. Thank you and goodbye.